This meeting is being recorded.
Mary, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Jacques.
Great, thank you, Mary. Okay, I will call to order this special emergency meeting of the Grand County Commission today, August 30th. Present, we have in the House Commissioners Josie Kovash, Tricia Dean, Sarah Stock, and myself, Jacques Hadler. And on Zoom, we have Commissioner Mary McGann. We also have Commission Administrator Mallory Nassau, Associate Administrator Quinn Hall, and Clerk Gabriel Wojtek. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to start off with a quick statement, and then we'll get to citizens to be heard. First off, I want to extend deepest sympathies to the residents and businesses in Moab and Grand County that were affected by our unprecedented August 20th flooding event. I've seen a lot of the terrible damage to businesses and residences. Talked to a lot of business owners, many of whom are personal friends of mine, and I just want to say that this relief effort is the result of genuinely wanting to help businesses as quickly as possible with the cleanup expense and to get them back on their feet. This all came together very quickly, which I am learning in government is a very difficult thing. And I especially want to thank August and Ben from the EDD who have worked tirelessly, as well as our Strategic Development Director, Chris Baird, working very hard for the last 3 or 4 days on this up to the last minute. So thanks, guys. And I also want to try to address some of the most vocal concerns that we've heard as we've reached out to various entities. And that is about pulling money from the tourism promotion part of the TRT fund to fund the business relief grants for the tourism-based businesses that apply. The main concern is that taking money from this pool will diminish the much needed marketing efforts. So I wanted to make clear the county has sufficient reserves to cover this relief grant program and marketing program scheduled to launch in September and continue until next summer. On top of the $300,000 fly market campaign that Love is already contracted and executing this fall. The EDD plans to launch an additional $500,000 drive market campaign as soon as possible, paid for via tourism promotion TRT reserves. And the EDD has state grant funding to pursue a $450,000 campaign to continue the fly marketing campaign that's already budgeted through the fall to start in December of this year through the end of June of 23. So those are ongoing projects. Although the county is not approving these additional marketing funds at this meeting, we had talked about that, but didn't want to rush it. The EDD plans to request commission approval for this campaign at our next commission meeting 1 week from today. And lastly, a representative from the Travel Council Advisory Board will serve on the approval committee to respect the statutory role as an advisor on the expenditure of the TRT funds as per state statute. And again, I think this is a great program to help businesses now quickly. And I hope that we get full support from the commission and the community as we dig out and move on from the flood. So thank you. And I'll open it up to citizens to be heard in the chambers first. And if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be wonderful. Do I have any citizens to be heard here? Do we have any citizens to be heard on our Zoom meeting who would like to speak right now to this? All right, it looks like we have, is that Daniel? I'm having a hard time seeing. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
All right, thank you for giving me a moment to talk. My name is Daniel Loveridge. I'm the general manager of the Hoodoo Hotel here in Moab, Utah. I am attending this representing also the Utah Tourism Industry Association as a member of it. They had asked that I also attend this meeting and speak on their behalf to some degree. And I also need to note that I am on the Travel Council Advisory Board, but I am not representing them at this time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring up a couple of things on this. First off and foremost, I don't think anybody in the community would say this is a bad use of government funds, of TRT funds. Anybody who dealt with this flood knows the necessity of it. I woke up, or I walked outside that night and my front yard was a literal lake. I live across the street from Swanee Park, and I was within an inch of having my entire house flooded. So for those people who suffered far worse than me, and I have several friends, industry people that I know who suffered from it, we recognize the true unique nature of the need that is going on. The UTIA wants to make a few comments known. First off, and particularly that this is a one-time exception for this emergency situation. We also want to acknowledge that while the need for businesses have a need for this program and they need the immediate access to funds, we want to draw attention to the fact that the reason for these available TRT funds is that Grand County has retained an unspent fund balance to date. As an industry, we encourage Grand County to continue steps toward the development of a plan and strategy for the use of these dollars, outlining their reinvestment into the visitor economy and the intended use for these dollars, particularly in a more timely manner. We urge the county to consider the grant board include also a TTAB representative, which would be a Tourism Tax Advisory Board member on the grant. So that's the UTIA commentary on it. I would like to also point out personally, in the proposal, it points out how the economy has been down this year. It's my personal belief that the economy is down in part because we are not using the TRT funds where we should. We're holding on to them instead of advertising more effectively. That's had a direct impact on our economy overall this year. So those are my comments and my feelings on it. Thank you for everybody who put the work into coming up with this grant. Definitely glad we have the funds to use, and definitely think it's a worthwhile venture.
Thank you very much for your comments, Daniel. Lacey, I think you had your hand up after Daniel.
Yeah, so the Monarch Chamber of Commerce just wanted to kind of echo that a little bit and just thank you so much for all of your hard work in putting this together. I know it's no easy feat, and you guys have worked, Jacques and August and Ben and the commission and the staff getting together like this is really appreciated to support the businesses. It'll really help with that gap between getting their doors open now and then any federal funding that might become available. And since it's been such a challenging few months, like Daniel said, our visitation has been down and it's been challenging already. So this has compounded that. So definitely it will help, but we are looking forward to the advertising that you mentioned. We're hoping that the commission will approve that as well. And looking to use those funds, in a maybe more consistent and long-term way to keep our visitation going. I think the best way that we can support businesses at this time is, while they're trying to get their doors open, that we make sure that there's people at the doors. So, but thank you so much. Like I said, this is a great use and way to support those businesses that were impacted. And we're grateful for your hard work on it.
Thank you very much, Lacey. Is there anyone else on Zoom who would like to be heard at this time? And I'll make one more call out to everyone in the chamber. Anyone care to come forward and make comment? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to our general business action items. Authorizing emergency expenditure of transient room tax funds for flood relief assistance, and presenting will be our Strategic Development Director, Chris Baird. As well as
I actually have been.
Oh, yes,
I'll cover
we do.
questions, whatever.
Okay, thank you. And we have been joined by Commissioner Walker on Zoom.
So I think probably the best way to cover this is probably just go through the 5-page program proposal. It's fair, obviously, it's longer than some things, but I think it gets to the point and it'll make sure that we really understand the scope of what we're proposing today and have an opportunity for any like revisions or line item changes that the commission might want to see. And then also ensuring that the public at large understands the scope of the proposal. So I'm just going to read it as Ben scrolls through. So today we're looking at the new program proposal for flood relief. It's an emergency grant program. Part 1 background. The Grand County Economic, I'm going to try to speak to it. You can actually see that here. The Grand County Economic Development Department seeks to utilize transient room tax funds to create and fund an emergency grant program. This grant program will be deployed in direct response to damages wrought by the August 20, 2022 flooding of Grand County's Mill Creek and will provide relief funds for businesses. Part 2 overview. The Economic Development Department proposes the creation of a grant program with the aim of supporting businesses in their efforts to address significant damage and or successfully reopen their businesses after the August 20, 2022 flood. Applicable uses of grant funds include direct cleanup costs, renovations, construction costs, and other basic responses to flooding damages, and machinery and or equipment replacement. The grant program will be funded from the county's TRT Reserve Fund. The county attorney has reviewed and authorized this expenditure as per Utah Code Section 53-2A-205, Section 2, Subsection A, which authorized the county to utilize all available resources reasonably necessary to manage a local emergency, the Emergency Management Act, I believe, and Utah Code Section 17-13-2, Subsection 2A, which authorizes the county to spend TRT funds on development and encouragement of tourism, as well as economic diversification activities. Tourism-related requests will be funded by the tourism promotion allocation of TRT funds, and non-tourism related requests will be funded by the economic diversification allocation of TRT funds. The Economic Development Department is requesting that the County Commission approve the expenditure of $250,000 for this program. Every grant request will be eligible to be funded up to $5,000 or up to 20% of the organization's damage assessment, whichever is greater. Grant awards shall not exceed $20,000. To put that in perspective, if I have a $1,000 request, 20% of that is $100, $1,000 is the greater amount. If I have a $10,000 request, 20% of that is $2,000, but $5,000 is the greater amount. If I have a $100,000 request, 20% of that is $20,000. The max award, the greater amount. So just to kind of keep some guardrails on that for the approval committee. Section 3, cost and resource requirements. No application fees will be charged. The Economic Development Department will generate the following application resource materials to support applicants. At least one webinar guiding prospective applicants through the prerequisites and application process and addressing frequently asked questions. A list of applicable and disallowed grant fund uses on the web, an online feedback form assessing the grant design and application process. Part 4, timeline. The following timeline was created by the Economic Development Department. Currently, the creation of this program has aligned with the timeline set out below. This proposal was reviewed by the County Commission Chair and Strategic Development Director that has taken place. Today, the proposal is under consideration by the Grand County Commission during an emergency meeting. The goal, if this program is approved today, that we would launch the grant program this Thursday. Our office, the Economic Development Department, would conduct community outreach, publish website and resources, and begin accepting applications. And then the program would be open for applications from Thursday until Sunday, September 18th. Is that correct? So that gives people 2 weeks plus a weekend to fill out the application. The review period will start on Tuesday, September 6th after the Labor Day holiday, where the approval committee will meet to review applications and award funds on a rolling basis. On September 6th, grant funds will be eligible to be dispersed at the earliest, although not guaranteed at that point. We would require that the grantees complete a final grant report within 3 months of receiving the initial disbursement. So that would mean that by the latest, we would have all of the reports done on December 19th of this year. Section 5, eligibility. Eligible recipients of this program will have experienced significant impacts to the business's operability and have little or no access to significant recovery resources such as flood or other applicable insurance. The intended recipients of this program have experienced these impacts as a direct result of the August 20, 2022 flooding of Grant County's Mill Creek. Unrelated flood claims will render an application ineligible for this grant. Applicants will be asked to explain their situation and how they fit these criteria. All local businesses shall be eligible to apply this program. Local business shall mean a for or nonprofit business or a sole proprietor operating under a registered DBA with its primary place of business registered within Grant County prior to August 20th, 2022. Which business pays a 1099 or W-2 wages to at least one person who has their primary residence in Grant County. Applicants that complete the Grant County 8/20/2022 flood damage assessment self-reporting form, which is managed by the building department and available on grantcountyutah.net/flood right now, prior to September 4th, 2022, will be given priority status. So part of this is also incentivizing businesses to complete that, which gives us the best possible position to get federal funding, federal disaster relief funding, separately from this program. Section 6, evaluation criteria. The Economic Development Department has established the following criteria with which to evaluate applications. Step 1, a simple filter. Is this business established prior to the flooding event? Yes or no. If you were established after, then you're not eligible. Impact evaluation. Was the damage and or other stated impact in the grant application caused specifically by the storm and flooding of Mill Creek on August 20th, 2022? Was the organization severely affected to the point of inoperability? Did this business need to close, relocate partially or fully? What is its trajectory for reopening? The approval committee shall first prioritize awarding funding to those businesses that were first to close. In the event funding requests exceed available funding, closure shall constitute a requirement for funding. Applicant resource evaluation. Does the applicant have insurance to cover their loss in part or full? Does the applicant need bridge funds because they expect to recover the value of their loss in part or full from insurance or other recovery resources? Are the funds requested going to provide an immediate relief that will support direct economic gains? Or is the applicant requesting future project funds or reimbursement of prior expenditures? So this is all so that the approval committee has some context to really drive resources towards highest need, lowest resource applicants. During the evaluation process, applicants may be asked to provide further information related to their application. Just a catch-all. Section 7, approval committee. To maintain impartiality throughout the grant application, disbursement, and reporting process, the Economic Development Department shall not participate in the assessment of any applications and shall serve solely as the administrator of this grant program, provided, however, that the Grant County Economic Development Director, myself, shall have the authority to veto any particular grant award that violates the authority granted by the Grant County Commission to the approval committee hereunder. Application shall that's basically intended to create a situation in which we can move fast on this, but also be able to have some control over what comes through. Application criteria shall be assessed by an approval committee appointed by the respective entities listed below: Grant County, Moab City, the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce, the Moab Area Travel Council Advisory Board, and the Grant County Economic Development Advisory Board. So we'll be requesting that those entities appoint their representatives, and they will not have to go through the county commission to be appointed to that committee. However, each entity shall only appoint representatives without restricted conflicts of interest as defined by the Grant County Ethics Ordinance number 593/2019 with any affected businesses. If a restricted conflict of interest is disclosed or arises after appointment, the appointing entity shall accept the resignation of that representative and appoint another. Grants shall be awarded by majority vote of the approval committee, subject to the Economic Development Director's veto. The EDD shall be responsible for preparing the approval committee's grant awards, drafting individual grant contracts, and dispersing grant funds upon execution of the grant contracts by the grantee and the chair of the county commission. Section 8, grant match requirement. Grantees are required to match their grant awards at a rate of 10%. Matches can be made up of the following resources: dedicated labor in support of flood damage recovery efforts, valued at hourly wages of the associated worker, materials and supplies purchased in direct response to flood damage and or recovery efforts, services procured in direct response to flood damage and or recovery efforts, or volunteer hours for donated labor. The footnote here under section 1 refers to the state of Utah's value of volunteer labor, which is $27.82 per hour. Given the amount of volunteer hours that we've seen, we don't think this should be a difficult match to meet, but think that having a match helps to ensure that we're getting legitimate applications. Receipts, invoices, volunteer hour logs, and or other relevant documents will be required to prove that the applicant's required match has been met. Section 9, grant disbursement. Grantees who receive funding through this grant program will be required to sign a grant contract. Grantees will have 3 months to spend their initial award and submit the required final grant report. Grant funds may also be used to reimburse flood impact costs that were expended prior to this program's creation and align with the applicable uses listed in the overview section. Grantees must provide documentation to prove that these expenditures align with the stated applicable uses. Grants will be dispersed on a 50-50 basis upon grant contract approval. Grantees will initially receive 50% of their total award. To access the remaining 50%, grantees must provide proof that they spent their initial disbursement on the stated flood damage recovery efforts, as well as a completed final grant report. The Economic Development Department intends to disperse funds as soon as possible. However, this is contingent upon the swift and judicious review of applications by the approval committee. That is the proposal, top to bottom. Any questions?
Any questions from the commission to August? I've workshopped this extensively, so I feel like I'm pretty intimately familiar with it. But
I do have one question, and this is all terrific, and I thank the 3 of you for all the work you put in. I'm really excited that this is happening. And I was just thinking about businesses who do not own their property, but there's property damage that affects the business. So how is that going to work?
So, like, for example, Up the Creek leases their property. My understanding that this follows the business license, so that they would have a business license to operate under their lease. So maybe they might not own the property, but it's about getting them up and running. So if they so chose to recover costs through this program, they should be able to as a lessee of the property under their business license, even if they're not the owner of the property. That's the intention.
I could weigh in on that too if y'all want.
Yeah.
I mean, most commercial leases obligate the lessee to maintain the property. And so we might see a lot of situations where lessees are required to do this maintenance and it would flow through them. But the property owner could also, is most likely a local business, even if it's a single member LLC that's holding investment property. So they would also be eligible. So either way, either one of those businesses could apply. And of course, a lot of our businesses, it's the physical construction costs and talking to businesses are huge and important, but it's the loss of operating funds that is the big killer for at least many of the businesses I've talked to. So I do think that's the piece. And especially this is really important, but because there are going to be more funding requests than we have money, there is the cap. And so, the operating expenses, I think, are what most local businesses are going to be seeking first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can speak maybe briefly also to the operating expenses piece. Although the applicable uses are very direct concrete material costs, some of the thinking going into this was if you spent your money that you were going to spend on operating expenses to cover these short-term needs, that we basically, as reimbursing those short-term needs, is actually creating an operation cash flow fund, even if those costs have already been incurred.
Right, thank you. Any other questions for August or Chris or Ben? Or discussion or anything you want to say about this? Mary? Yeah, go ahead.
Thinking about that, I noticed on the application, there's no request for information about finances of the business. Like, what if they have a ton of operating money? I'm sure you guys discussed that and came to a decision, but maybe you can just speak to why you chose not to ask.
Yeah, well, part of that, so with the CARES grants that happened in the past, those require 5 years of P&Ls and basically proving like this is your trajectory and what you would have made if COVID didn't happen. And the reporting burden and the application burden on businesses to do that is relatively high. And given the short-term emergency nature of the program, we opted more towards a qualitative self-report. So asking basically setting our intention, this is what we want this program to do, asking businesses to respond in the application under the evaluation section, basically having questions that we would ask in the process that get at that without having them to disclose proprietary business information and go to their accountant and get all that stuff sorted. Although it's important, we kind of decided to move towards, kind of let us know where you're at, and we'll try to make a judgment call on that basis, given the emergency status.
So we haven't actually drafted the application yet. This is just sort of laying out the tenets of the application. And we did discuss, that we probably should require a notarized affidavit that what they're presenting is true. And so we are, requesting a sort of in a narrative form, an explanation of the damages and the resources they have available to them to meet those damages. We're looking to prioritize, lending assistance to businesses who had greater amounts of damage and fewer resources to recover. And so, but we're not asking for a lot of proprietary or maybe even any proprietary business information, but just asking for a notarized affidavit and a narrative associated with that. I think that probably most businesses have already spent quite a bit of money on cleanup.
Yeah.
And so, part of the reason for making the applicable uses, direct material costs, so it's easy for us to account for and to relate to any audit or any, oversight on this program. So I think that that's a big part of the sort of the confidence that we have in this with regard to how we travel.
That sounds good to me. Thank you.
Thanks. Mary and Kevin online, do either of you have anything you'd like to ask these guys or make a comment?
No, I'm very happy we're doing this and that we have the means to do it. I'm very pleased. And thank you everyone who has put the effort into making this come to fruition at such a speedy way. So thank you.
I don't have any questions about the document. I mean, are we going to have general discussion later, or is this just Q&A?
Well, someone would have to make a motion for that, and then we will open it up to discussion. Not that we're not doing that right now, but yes. So I would entertain a motion if no one has anything further to say right now.
Do you want to discuss who is going to be on the approval board prior to making the motion?
We can, sure. Yeah, and that would just be someone from the county, obviously. That we'd be appointing. Correct, guys. Like, the city would be responsible for their appointing.
Yeah, I understand that.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal appointment. Like, it doesn't have to, but as written, it doesn't require. It's basically up to the agency to nominate and appoint through whatever processes they see fit. So if you want to do that, not at this, I don't think.
Well, I would do it for the county.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're the board that's going to be responsible for making the county's appointments. So you might as well just do it.
Right.
So that's
No. And it's in the motion. It's part of the motion. It's blank right now. Somebody has to decide who's going to.
Right. And then you could also just pick a staff member if you wanted, but
not it.
That's what, Chris, I was thinking of you.
No, I mean, I'm already kind of behind. I need to get really going on all my budget.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, Jacques is going to have to sign off on these as well. So whether it's good or not to have it be Jacques or somebody else.
Right. I'll also say that I am working for a few days with Ben and company on the STAR grant things for a few days.
Right.
Next week, and that's time consuming and similar territory.
Right. let me just look at the. So what is the main time frame that you need us from? Basically,
The approval committee can make their own schedule, but I think they would meet as early as Tuesday the 6th.
okay,
And that would probably be the first meeting, I would guess.
okay,
I would think so. Part of the reason
Tuesday the 6th.
part of the reason we design this on an ongoing basis is because if the 6th rolls around and we have no applications,
Right.
there's no need to meet, and hopefully, as things trickle in, we can have like
Okay.
frequent, shorter meetings.
Okay.
Like barn
Okay.
burners or something.
Or it could just be like one meeting per week for those main 2
Okay.
weeks, or a meeting per week for 3 weeks until the money's dispersed.
I'm fine with doing it. Look at these bobbleheads. Great. Suckers. No, I'd be happy to do it.
Cool.
Awesome, Trish. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Do you want to
I've raised my hand.
Yes, Mary?
I have an idea, just because this is happening quick, and it will doing grants is very complicated at times and time consuming. I would think it would be might behoove us to have an alternate as well.
that's a good idea.
That is a very good idea, Mary.
Are you volunteering?
And I would volunteer to be an alternate, and it would be good, and I can't say that could always happen, but one person votes, but if alternate and the person who's on the board is at the meetings, so that they're not doing catch up.
Right.
But then only the two people would only have one vote. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yes.
Yeah, the 3rd grade team's going in.
All right.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Teachers rule, eh?
Yes, teachers do rule.
Does it seem like we need to make alterations to have an alternate, or is that just a given?
You could suggest that we amend the proposal to include allowances for an alternate representative, and we could carry that out.
Yeah, I don't think that's a big deal. I think you guys go ahead. And
Yeah.
primary and
Okay.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Josie.
All right, okay. I move to approve the emergency allocation of $250,000 from the transient room tax fund balance for the purposes of local flood relief as per the attached emergency flood relief grant program proposal. Appoint Tricia Dean with Mary McGann as a proposed alternate to serve on the approval committee, and authorize the chair to sign and finalize all grants as approved by the committee.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion by Josie and a second by Trish, and we'll open it up for general commission discussion. Did you have anything you wanted to put out there, Kevin?
You're putting me on the spot. No, I guess I think this is a good idea. I'm in favor of it, and some of the comments addressed the sources of the funding, and I just wanted to point out that we make decisions about our various promotional expenditures based on a lot of considerations for what we think is best on balance of the community, and I think in no conceivable scenario would we run out of money from that particular fund anytime soon. So I think it's great to discuss how we should be spending the promotional budget. It's an ongoing debate, and it's one we can continue to have and make adjustments as conditions change. But I think spending this $250,000 or part of this $250,000 from that, I think is a very easy decision. So.
Thanks, Kevin.
So, Jock, I just wanted to edify a little bit. So prior to the floods, I'd already initiated, a request of Economic Development Department to work with Love Communications on an enhanced proposal for two main reasons. One is that we do have too much money in the fund balance, needs to be spent down. And the second is that we're seeing some reduced visitation and some lower than average sales tax collections. And so that's obviously a prompt to bolster direct marketing. And so that process actually started before the flood came around. And so the way that I think we're going to address that is that on the 6th, we're going to have a discussion item and perhaps approval of a creative brief contract with Love. And then on the 20th, we're gonna have to actually have a public hearing for the budget amendment because we can't increase the bottom line of the Economic Development Department's fund without going through a public hearing. And so we'll go through a public hearing to bring that money into the budget for 2022. And then we'll have, a lot more details about how we propose to spend that money. We're also going to propose to bring a significant amount of money in for economic diversification because that's built up also. And so it'll be a pretty significant budget amendment and bolstering the direct marketing campaigns as well as the STAR grant and other economic diversification activities. So that's sort of the timeline there. We usually wait two weeks after a public hearing. So, we're waiting about a month before we finalize the budget amendment.
Yeah.
Or a little more. So, that's just the timeline on it.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Chris. Appreciate it. Any other comment or discussion? And like I said at the beginning, I'm very much in favor of this. I'm super pleased that we were able to get it done in such a timely fashion. And yeah, the speed at which this happened was awesome. Yeah, a lot of good work.
Well, I kind of add one more thing on that, which is that I think I appreciate the commission's willingness to give us latitude to experiment with policy, specifically with the economic diversification priorities in the STAR grant that we created. And the result of that experimentation is that we spent months and months and months and months developing a grant proposal that then we got approved, a whole process that we were nearly about to finish up when the flooding happened. And that all that work that Ben primarily put in us in a position where, okay, let's get the grant program for flood relief, carbon copy the guts of that and move very quickly to put something together that I think is nearly airtight in terms of like a really good program. So I really appreciate Ben's work on that, and I wanted to appreciate the commission's willingness to kind of experiment and try new things, and that's hard to do sometimes in government. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, August. All right. Anything else from any other commissioners before I call for a vote? All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Kovash and a second by Commissioner Hedin. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And it looks like the motion passes unanimously, 6-0 with Commissioner Clapper absent. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming in on a Tuesday. We weren't supposed to be doing anything and getting this done so quick. I think the week that we saved here is going to make a huge difference for a lot of people, and getting the money dispersed very quickly is going to be crucial for a lot of folks.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate
Thanks,
it.
you guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good work. Yeah, thanks.
And I will adjourn the meeting. Can't forget to do that.